Hey everyone, Livy here, back with another video, and today we are doing part 3 of my tarot deck collection. Specifically, this is like the third row in like this organization thing I have that has all the tarot decks and oracle I own. I have basically one giant well, not giant, but it's like one structure that has, I think it's like 4 or 5 different compartments in that, and then I have like a 4 by like a little square that has the extra oracle and tarot. So this is part 3. It's going through the third row. Have the same, I think, amount of decks that I've kind of been showing. So we're just gonna get right into it with the first deck in this tarot or video. By the way, I should say this is part 3, but technically, I guess if you're looking at the whole series of my whole entire collection, it's part 4 because my mini pocket size and odd shaped video is also a part of my collection. I'm just not including those decks into the main tarot section. So anyways, and oracle, because eventually I will be doing my oracle decks too. But anyways, we're moving on. The first deck I'm going to show today is now in this bag. It used to have a different deck in here, but I'm moving that deck along. So what it houses instead is this one. And I believe this deck is called the Mermaid Tarot. This is a Llewellyn deck that is on the cardstock I am not a fan of. They see how it's like very high gloss. Like weird sticky. I don't know. I just don't like it. They switched to this sometime in the late 2000s, early 2020s. I don't know why. Is what it is. Anyways, despite not liking the cardstock, the size is good. And the artwork of this deck is beautiful. It came in one of those big boxes that also has a guidebook, like a bigger guidebook, but I don't have that in front of me right now. Don't know where that went. I'm not going to reach for it. But this deck is beautiful. As far as mermaid decks go, I do really appreciate the art. I've only used this deck, though, for 1 month and maybe only to do 1 or 2 readings. So I really haven't tried to bond with this deck too deeply yet. I already have plans to use this more in August, though, so maybe I'll get a deeper bond with it then. But I feel like most of it is just like the cardstock experience, okay? Like sensory-wise for me, as someone who's autistic, I really do not like certain textures of glossy cardstocks. There's some glossy decks I have now that I've kind of tolerated because the way that even though they're glossy, I've managed to tolerate a little bit, but I don't normally make exceptions for that. But despite that, I do think this deck is very diverse, which is I was surprised for being like a mermaid deck. It is a little more gruesome in cards like this one, but it's got some really fascinating depictions. I just feel like, again, I need to deep dive into it more. I just wish it was on better cardstock so I would enjoy it a little bit better. So yeah, this is Llewellyn's Mermaid Tarot, and I guess I'm going to move on to the next deck now. Okay. This next deck is actually a very recent acquisition. That's why it's in this weird scarf. I'm in the mail as I'm like literally talking. In the mail is coming the actual bag that I want to put this deck in. But this deck is the Mystic Fairy Tarot. It has a little white book, but it came in, I got this used, and it came in this bigger Llewellyn style box where it used to like be open from the top. So it still also has its like guidebook from that time. And what else did I want to say about this? Oh, why did I get this? Okay, so I got this deck used. And what's cool about that is that whoever owned this deck previously edged this deck, as you can see, in this like coppery brown to match the backs. And the reason why I got this one used, because you can still get this deck. The reason why I got this one used is because I saw that this was an older printing of the deck. So this version came with these 2 cards. I don't know if they still do this, but as you can see, it's like a fairy farewell. Oh, fairy greeting and then fairy farewell. And they're like it's like a little poem for both, which I thought was cute. These are the backs of this older version. And the reason why I got it used too was specifically I was looking for a version of this deck that still had these borders, as you can see. But also because, speaking of Llewellyn, we were just talking about a Llewellyn deck. This deck, this older printing of this deck, has the old Llewellyn cardstock that I actually liked. Not a high gloss. Only if the light goes near, you can see a slight gloss. But when you touch it, it's just nice and smooth. It was a good cardstock. My version of the Raven's Prophecy Tarot that I showed in part 1 of the standard size tarot videos, that was printed on Llewellyn's old cardstock, as well as the Shadowscapes Tarot, which I don't remember. I think I showed that last video. But anyways, let's get into this deck. So I specifically got an older version because I wanted the borders. But it's not just the borders and the cardstock. The reason why I was interested in getting this deck is because I think this might be a better fit for me compared to the Victorian Fairy Tarot, which I will be showing, I think in the last part I want to do for this series. You're going to see the standard size. I already showed the mini in the mini video, but listen, I got that deck on Kickstarter. The indie run, right? And I found myself a little disappointed in it because the production quality did not match how much they raised in money. It just felt, I don't know, it just felt a little strange. I am still going to try to use the Victorian Fairy Tarot, of course, but I think this deck as is might be a better fit for me when it comes to having a fairy style deck. Now what's interesting is this deck, as you can see, it does run very yellow, which is the same thing you could say for the Victorian Fairy Tarot. For some reason it does have more yellow tones in it, which isn't always my favorite. But what I think I find appealing about these fairies is that they kind of remind me of the fairies I would have been obsessed with when I was like 11 years old. I used to love stories about fairies. I grew up, in the early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s, in which a lot of fairies were like illustrated like this. And so I don't know, it just reminds me of like and I wouldn't say this is necessarily inner child, maybe my inner preteen deck. It kind of gives those vibes. So I'm really interested to see how this works. But anyways, I'm going to move on from this one because I felt like I talked about it way too long. But yeah, this is the Mystic Fairy Tarot Shuffles Well. And yeah, I'm excited to see how it works for me. Okay, this next deck is actually a recent acquisition, and I kind of wish I was able to include it in my mini pocket size and odd shape deck video, but this is the tin version of the Exile Tarot. Specifically, this is the Awaken edition, okay? This Woe Studios, this is indie. I should have just said that the other 2 decks I showed were obviously mass market decks. This is an indie. And, even though the tin is a little silly, it comes, you can see there's like a plastic in there. There was like a top thing too. But this version of the Exile Tarot, which I'm very excited to show, is pocket size, guys. It's a tin. So for those of you who are watching, by the way, my mini video, and you were like, oh, the little Exile Tarots, they look so cute, I want a mini. Might I actually suggest, in case you're afraid it's too tiny, you get this version instead. Because, as you can see, I have small hands. And even though it's longer, it is a pocket-sized deck, and so it fits perfectly in my hand. The backs of this edition are also incredibly beautiful. It still has a great guidebook, by the way. This guidebook, look at this. I know it's in like hell small print, so not everybody is going to be able to read that very well. But it's like a chunky paragraph for each information, and it gives you both the awaken, and the silent cards, like how they look. So this little guidebook is actually fantastic. I was starting to read some of the entries, and it was really, really good. But then you get into the actual artwork, and of course it is the same beautiful artwork as the Exile minis, but obviously now that it's in a slightly bigger size, I can see the artwork much better, and it is beautiful. I am excited to deep dive into this one, but I don't remember when I next put it for rotation. But this tin size is the perfect size. I really wish more creators would make this size, this exact size. It's like small enough to be a good travel size deck, but it's big enough where you can still see the artwork and feel like if someone was going to get a reading from this deck, I don't think they would have a hard time making out the imagery, you know what I mean? So this edition, this style of the Exile Tarot is perfect. So if you were on the fence about the Exile Tarot, very many, definitely get the tin. The tin, perfect. Perfect size. I'm obsessed. I was looking at the artwork in more detail, and I'm starting to feel more connected to it now. So that's also very exciting. And yeah, this is just one I highly recommend because the creator's art style is beautiful. It is on, as you can see, it is on a very easy, slippy, they're linen finish, but I really like Woe Studios linen. It's like a waffle texture. I don't know if you guys, there you go, you might see in the light. And it's just really nice to shuffle and work with. So this is the Exile Tarot, and I definitely like this tin edition, do approve. Okay, and speaking of the Exile Tarot, I'm also going to, of course, show my standard size Monsoon Tarot. I love this deck. It is one of my faves. This is the Monsoon Tarot standard. I had the mini first before I decided to get this one. This edition was just a standard Monsoon, and it came in a tuck box instead of that tin that you saw. But this is this exact same artist, which I think they now go by Springtide is what it says in the guidebook of the Exile Tarot mini. In this standard edition of the Monsoon, you do get a very small bit about each one, but as you can see, you get both Chinese and English, but it's not very in-depth. So that's the one thing. If you were looking for that with the Monsoon, you won't get it, okay? You won't get it in this edition. But these are the backs, which are also incredibly beautiful. And it's a standard size. So as you can see, it is bigger, but because it's linen, I can still hold it pretty well in my hand. It's not a problem for me. And I'm obsessed with the Monsoon Tarot, okay? I love this deck. This one is very different from the Exile Tarot. So I would say the Exile Tarot definitely feels more like a fantasy landscape that could be in some secondary world, and maybe it had some technology at some point, but some of it's degraded now. I would say the difference here with the Monsoon Tarot is that personally, the Monsoon Tarot feels more like a dream world, right? Like it's fantastical, but it feels like one that is entirely in the world of dreams. And this is probably more because in this deck, more apparent than the Exile Tarot, more the faces, well, don't have eyes and sometimes even noses. This one does, as you can see, there's more detail. And even this one and this one. But then you have faces like this, which not everybody I know would like this, but I love how dreamy and eerie that the Monsoon Tarot can sometimes be. It also gives some very fascinating readings. This Hermit is one of my favorite Hermit cards ever. So good. Oh my goodness. It's just, I always love this one. And I mean, even look at the Nine of Water, so beautiful. This one did do something different, of course, as you can see. It has the elements instead. But as you can see, because it is that beautiful waffle linen finish that Woe Studios does, it is so easy to shuffle. I really like this deck. Cannot recommend this one enough, but I also realize that this will not be for everybody if you prefer everyone to have faces and you don't like as much of dreamy landscapes. But nonetheless, still recommend it, Monsoon Tarot. Okay, now I've got something exciting to show you guys. This is actually the first time I'm going to mention this situation here. So, both of these decks are actually the Northern Animal Tarot. This is by Wilder Heart Studios. This is indie, also just like Monsoon and Exile, where specifically this creator is Canadian, so just be aware of that if you don't live in Canada and want to get stuff from the shop. But I love the Northern Animal Tarot, and as you can see, I somehow now have 2 editions because, as the sticker says, this is an oops version of Northern Animal Tarot. And I actually got it free because I was ordering from the creator's shop. I specifically got the mat that you see down here and a shirt from that creator. And when I did, she included a free oops version. So we're going to compare these today. I cannot believe I got lucky enough to have a different edition of the Northern Animal Tarot. So this one that I'm going to show you, this one here, is actually the first printing of the 3rd edition. And it came on different cardstock too. So I've taken out the 3 extra cards, and then it came with this, you know, it has a guidebook and everything. This free oopsie does not have the guidebook, but I think they're still doing a deal right now, or maybe it's ending, I don't know, where if you get anything from the shop, you will get a free oopsie. So if you've been wanting to get the Northern Animal Tarot and you don't mind that's a different color, this is probably your chance to do that. You just need to buy something else from the shop. But anyways, as you can see in this first printing, this is the tuck box it came in. It's a little janky now, only because, well, I've used this deck a bit. The Northern Animal Tarot also was my, what's it called? It was one of my standout decks of 2023. And that's the inside. I don't know, you guys can see a little bit of it. But let's compare the two. Like, how are these oopsies? Okay, I can see it a little bit. I can see it a little bit here. This one is obviously darker. That's the straight up version here. So this is darker. These are 2 different cardstocks too. So the oopsie version is now on the linen finish that I believe all of the 3rd editions now come in. But when I got this deck, I got the first printing of the 3rd edition. And it came in an actually different cardstock. I don't know if you guys can tell by the light. It's kind of smooth, has an interesting texture to it. And this, I think what the big selling point with this cardstock was that it's might be more water resistant, which is kind of cool actually. But as you can see size-wise, I don't know if you guys can tell, this edition is massive. Whereas this linen, even though it's like also kind of chunky because this deck is like 100 cards, this is still more manageable. This one actually, I'm not going to lie, sometimes hurts my hand, but I am still bonded to it. So let's look this over. Okay, so you can see, you can see how much bigger this one is. Holy shit. Okay. Otherwise, this is the exact same deck. Except I do see, so these oopsies, it looks like, definitely run a little bit darker than the Northern Animal Tarot normally prints. But nonetheless, it is still the same deck and it's beautiful. Oh, I can see, I think the coloring is a little different on this one. So I do see now how it ended up being an oopsie. As you can see, this one's still in order. This one is not. It is what it is. And I still love it. I still love it. I'm so excited now to have 2 different editions of this deck. I feel like I don't need to be as precious now. I was definitely more precious with the Northern Animal just because like I was, you know, afraid, right? To ruin it or to do anything or to take it around town and not have to worry as much. So this is actually cool. I don't mind having an oopsie that's like slightly darker in color. I think it's very cool. And yeah, I just wanted to show you guys that now I have two versions of this deck, but technically it's still the same deck, so I'm just counting them as one. But yeah, this is the Northern Animal Tarot in both the first printing of the 3rd edition and the Oopsie version that's now on their linen cardstock. And look, we can actually compare. Yep, you can definitely see this one is darker and slightly off colored compared to this one, but still great, still usable. And I love that I just have a backup copy now of this deck. Okay, speaking of Wilder Heart Studios, this is also by them. This is the newest deck, okay? And I love this one. This is the Magical Creatures Tarot. Also indie, of course, because it's by the same creator. This, compared to Northern Animal, which had anthropomorphic animals, this deck is fully with just magical creatures in it. And I was lucky enough through the Kickstarter to get copy 5 of 1,500. So that is pretty freaking cool. I never would have thought I would have had that number. But it comes with a guidebook too. I'm just going to leave the guidebook in there though. But it's fully on the linen, so very easy to hold, very easy to shuffle. I didn't show that with the Oopsie, but it's the same, okay? So really easy linen finish. But this deck is so different. It is such a different vibe than the Northern Animal Tarot, and yet I am obsessed. I feel like this one has slightly more... Well, no, the animal, I guess Northern Animal also has blues, but I feel like this one has more the darker side of blue and some purples and other tones, but it's still so beautiful. I love, love, love just how cute and kind, but also gives you exactly the message you need to hear readings that this deck has given so far. This golden egg card has come up quite a bit, which is kind of cool. Also has extras, as you can see, just like the Northern Animal Tarot did, but the extras in these versions, of course, as you can see, are named. By the way, speaking of the free Oopsie, what you could do if you're thinking about getting the Magical Creatures Tarot and you want a free Northern Animal Tarot, maybe might I suggest getting this one and then getting the free Oopsie if they still have it. I don't know. That would be kind of freaking cool. You get 2 decks for 1. I don't know. But I highly recommend this one. It just reads so well. Both the Northern Animal Tarot and this one, because I think they're RWS clone-ish, you know, they read very accurately. This one is less clone-ish than Northern Animal Tarot was. But I still like both of them. But yeah, this is the Magical Creatures Tarot. This has been a new favorite for me. I've liked it a lot. And like I said, shuffle's great. Beautiful backs. Do recommend it. But because I have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 more decks to show. So I'm trying to be a little quicker. I'm going to move on. But I really, really do like this one and do recommend it for others. Okay, next deck is a deck that I love deeply. I cannot see this deck not being in my collection. Holy shit, I don't know what would happen if it was not. This tarot deck is another indie deck. This is the Dream Vision Tarot. As you can see, this is the 2nd edition. I think technically this creator also has a version of this deck now that's in a tin. But I don't know if it's the same cardstock. It's slightly smaller in size, though, is what I've seen. But I only have this version. This is the only version I kind of want, to be honest. These are the backs of this one. I am obsessed with them. It has a guidebook, but I'm going to leave that guidebook in there. It's not a guide, but it's not too crazy anyways. And it has these beautiful dark blue matte edges that are fantastic. And the cardstock of this one is, so as you can see too, it's slightly longer. I could have put this in my odd shaped decks, but it's not like incredibly crazy long. So it is still kind of close to tarot size. And it is a little bit chunky though, so you can see my hand struggle a little bit, but I still love it nonetheless. And this deck is very dreamy, very otherworldly, very colorful. The texture of this cardstock is, I hesitate to say it's a complete rose petal finish, but it does kind of stick like that a little bit. It's just not as intense of a rose petal finish as the Wonder World tarots, but I really like just the smoothness and texture of it. This one runs a little pippy, but I would definitely say it's pips with feelings. I find her artwork, Emma Zhang's artwork, is fantastic. This deck, of course, came first, like the first, second edition. But then, of course, she came up with the Dream of the Nile Tarot. And then I saw she's doing another tarot deck that is inspired by Alice in Wonderland. And I'm literally hyperventilating just waiting for that deck to come out because Alice in Wonderland is my favorite thing. And I really like what I've seen her doing with the card so far. So I will definitely be getting that one whenever the hell it comes out. I don't know when. But this one is fantastic as is. It's very spacey in my mind. Very, very good though. Like the readings I've gotten from this have been very fascinating. I am going to use this again, I think this month in February as I'm filming this. I think so, yeah. And I'm excited. I'm excited to be able to pull this one back out again. But yeah, this is a Dream Vision Tarot. This is the second edition. There was a first edition, I think, at a different cardstock. This cardstock is a little bit on the thicker side. Please do not riffle shuffle this one. I feel like if you tried to do that, you would snap it in half. This is not cardstock where you can do that. Overhand is perfect and the way to go. Again, it's thicker. Don't do that to your deck. But anyways, Dream Vision Tarot. Not sure if this version is still out. Maybe it is. If it is, I do recommend it. And yeah, I'm going to move on to our next deck. Okay, next up, we have a deck that was one of my faves from last year. This is the Tarot of Echoes by Anna Turian. Anna Turian. This is indie, by the way, but Anna Turian is an amazing artist who has quite a few decks. It folds out like this. This does not come with a guidebook, but you can see Anna Turian 2024 is in there. These are the backs. These are the cards. They're good size, actually. They're standard tarot, so it fits well in my hand. It's the cardstock's kind of smooth. And it bends very easily. So riffle shufflers, you can rejoice. You can riffle shuffle this one. Anna Turian's done a lot of different decks. She's had, what is it called? Abyss Tarot of the Abyss or Abyss Tarot by, it's like a US Games one. She's done a few oracles. She's done an Arthurian tarot deck that is unfortunately only in France right now. I am waiting until that one has an English version until I get that. But that's not important right now. This deck is. This is a Tarot of Echoes, and I find the artwork of this one to be so colorful, so beautiful and fantastic. I really like the watercolor work done here. Really interesting interpretations of the tarot. I mean, some of them, like this Ace of Wands, like what? It's like a fire person in a candle. Like that is so good. Even this Queen of Cups. I'm like, what? It's so good. It is just so good. And I don't know. I do like this one a lot. I could say, okay, maybe like there's some diversity in here. You could argue maybe it would be nice if there was a little bit more. There's some, see, there's some. I think that's the only thing I would really fault about this deck. Or maybe if, like, I'd be curious to know more of Anna Turian's thoughts if it had a guidebook. But other than that, I really like it. And it's just so cool. I had some really great readings with this one too. It reads really well, pairs with quite a few decks and oracles that I have. Very colorful. I like how fantastical it is, but then some parts of it also feel like they could be in our world, but from a long historical part. Shuffles really nicely. I don't remember if this is still available. Don't know, but if you have a chance to get a hold of it and you're eyeing it, I do think this is a good one. So This is the Tarot of Echoes, and yeah, we're going to move on to the next deck. Okay, this is another indie deck. I feel like this video is mostly indie decks, but that's, you know what, that's fine. Sometimes it be like that. Anyways, this is the Unfinished Business Tarot. This is by MJ Cullinane, who is also famous and has a lot of decks that I feel like all of her decks get picked up mass market. So if you don't want to have to, you know, get an indie run of this, you don't have to rush to get it. But this is an indie run, printed in USA by Shuffled Ink. I do like the cardstock of this. The box is like this rose petally finish, which is very interesting. It is a chunky one though. People like me who have smaller hands, do beware. It is a little chunky. And I have, as you can see, the second printing. Here we go. Okay, these are the backs of the deck. And if you don't know about this deck, Unfinished Business is basically every person or every figure featured in this deck died and moved on, and they have unfinished business. It's kind of like the theme of this deck. Okay. Again, these are the backs. It has an almost rose petal finish to it, but it shuffles really well. So it's very confusing, but it is like chunky oracle size. Luckily, because the cardstock is thin though, I'm still able to like shuffle pretty well without a problem. So that's good. If it had been any thicker of a cardstock, I think I would have been on the biggest struggle bus of my life. But anyways, let me show you the cards. This deck is interesting. It is dark though, and this is the only MJ Cullinane deck I have because this is the only one where, I don't know, I was just called to want it. There was something about the way that she draws animals, which are pretty, but I just haven't been drawn to that. And so I liked that this deck had people. But here's the big but with this one. Okay, artwork is still stunning. Her artwork is beautiful, but there's cards in this deck that are very severe, so I would watch out, especially when paired with this chunky guidebook. So the guidebook of this one is interesting. So every card in this deck basically gets a short story that talks through the meaning of the card, and so you basically get a sense of what these characters are like. Now, I personally read through a lot of these, not all of them. I'm not going to say I read all of them. I didn't. But I don't think all of the stories were 100% successful for me. And also just some of it maybe could have been edited a little bit. But anyways, because of that experience, you could say this would probably be a better deck to just read and intuit on your own instead of reading the stories. Because some of the stories, again, I really like them, but some of them missed the mark a little bit for me. But I don't know. I have plans, I think, to use this again in October. This kind of feels, because it's like ghostly, that's kind of the vibes I'm getting. But yeah, this is the Unfinished Business Tarot. It is interesting. Again, first MJ Cullinane deck. I'm not sure I 100% am in love with it, but I do like the experience of this deck. Like, again, I like the texture of the cardstock. It has great production quality. So I feel like I just need to try to work with it a little bit more. But yeah, that's this deck. And now I'm going to move on because we still have 3 more decks to go through. Okay. Next up, another indie. Okay, spoiler alert, all the rest of these are indie, but for this video is what it is. Anyways, this is the Oceanum Arcane, also known as the Ocean Tarot. And this is by, I can kind of see her name here, Taylor Bryn Holquist Todd. She has some other decks, okay? She's doing a whole elemental series. So this one's the ocean one. I think a fire one came out recently, but she also had an earth one. And I'm pretty sure I know there's going to be an air one soon. I don't know what that'll be like, but this is the only one I have. These are the amazing backs though. This cardstock is actually really nice. It's like a matte, and it just feels nice. And it's also, as you can see, gilded. And this is the only one I have, but she actually has quite a few decks, this creator. Again, she's doing a whole elemental series right now, but she has a cat deck, a dog deck, and like a Myths and Legends deck. So she's got a lot of tarot. These decks, though, are beautiful. This Ocean Tarot, to be honest, is the only one I've been gravitated towards personally. And I think it's just because I love that it is such a good ocean deck. Like, this strength card is everything. I am obsessed. Obsessed. And I think some of the depictions are really funny and really interesting with this ocean one. But the other animal decks, I'm just not as drawn to. Maybe it's just the animals in particular. I'm more of an ocean girly. I don't know. But I just love it. Some people don't like this deck because they say it's too dark. And I mean, yeah, some of the cards do read darker. And this deck, it has been mean to me before. I am not going to lie. It has been a little bit. But I still love it. And I think me and this deck have reached a certain level of respect. But it can be a little catty at times. That's okay. I mean, sometimes our tarot decks just are like that. But I think this is a really good one. So, yeah, this is the Ocean Tarot. Really beautiful deck. Do think her artwork is really fascinating. I am curious to see how the air one comes out, though, because I also really love birds. So if that deck features a lot of birds, I might pick that one up. It just depends. But anyways, this is this one. And yeah, I'm going to move on to the last two decks of this video. Okay. The next deck I'm showing here is a deck that I am sorry to say is going out of print at the time of me filming this. I don't know if it's officially gone out of print yet, but it does intend to. But I think the creators do have other plans, but this is a Spacious Tarot, okay? This deck has actually been around for a very long time. As you can see, I have the second edition from 2020. The creators, oh, I forget what their first names are. I think one of them's Carrie, but there's Malin and Ruget. Forget their full names. But this deck is going out of print. And unfortunately, I have to speak about this, okay? Unfortunately, I think one of the biggest factors why this deck is now going out of print, despite it being around a long time, by the way, it's been around a while for an indie deck. Part of the reason it's going out of print is because, unfortunately, a lot of people were selling knockoffs online of this deck, okay? And because they were doing that, the creators wanted to protect themselves, and they said, you know what? No more. We're not running this deck anymore. And you know what? That's in their right to do that. As you can see, though, I have mixed in with this deck the expansion guidebook. The expansion and the Spacious Tarot. So they came up with a cool expansion. It's mixed in with my cards, so I'm going to show. I, by the way, love this deck. It is a little chunkier, but the actual size of the cards individually are a little bit smaller than standard tarot, so they fit well in my hand. But yeah, this deck is going out of print. Very sad. But this deck is very beautiful. I just realized my lighting is getting oddly dark. I guess the sun is setting, so that's not fun, but is what it is. See, this is one of the extra cards, and it's Aquarius. They made this deck a Minchiati style with the expansion. This deck is beautiful. It's simple in some ways, but fantastic. It is a deck with no people in it, okay? This is a deck for people who don't like tarot decks with people in them, basically. It's shot in a way where you mainly see landscapes, and it is on the pippier side in some parts, but I definitely argue it is a pips with feelings for sure. You can still get some meaning and some of the original sense, like even this Five of Wands, right? You get some sense of conflict here, going on a journey, you know. So you can make the case. This Fool card is beautiful. I really like this one, but yeah, unfortunately, because I think that was a big factor, unfortunately, was just so many people trying to sell counterfeits of this deck made it that they decided they had to go out of print. And that happens, right? It happens. Because unfortunately, the thing is, people like indie decks, but they don't want to pay the prices of indie decks. So they go, well, I want this deck and I only want to pay $5 for it. Which is mind-boggling to me because, like, hello, someone spent time creating this deck, creating this artwork. And they're doing it at the indie level. They're not doing it in a mass market level. Of course, it could cost a little bit, right? All these decks that I showed cost a little bit. But if you know they're going to be worth it, I don't see why you should get cheaper for cheaper quality. You know what I mean? But it is what it is. I'll get off my high horse. But if you can still get this deck while it's still in print, I do recommend it. It's a comforting deck. It's very nice. It's very gentle. This is basically my version of the Gentle Tarot. I know a lot of people like the Gentle Tarot, but for me, there's something about that deck that I just don't feel I need in my collection because I have this one. But yeah, anyways, this is the Spacious Tarot and its expansion. Beautiful Scorpio card. I'm gonna head out. Oh wait, no. Oh my God, what am I doing? I still have one more deck to show. I was gonna close off this video with just that, but oh my God, I have too many decks. I'm gonna show one more, but this was the Spacious Tarot. This is a good one. Get it while you can. I don't want to create FOMO in you, but if you really want it, it really is going out of print. So just be aware, and I'm going to move on to the last deck. Okay, this is the actual final deck of this video now. This is the Nemith Tarot, and this is by Jonasa Jaus, who, as you saw, already had, I already have the Jonasa Jaus Tarot, but this is the newest edition, or newer deck that this creator has. And this deck, oh man, this deck feels very near and dear to my heart. Because, so if you don't know Jonasa Jaus, she is Galician, okay? And if you don't know anything about Galicia, basically it is in Spain, but it's in the northern part of Spain that, to be honest, a lot of that area is a combination of Portugal and Spain, okay? But even Galician language, which isn't Spanish, by the way, it's their own language, is closer to Portuguese even than it is to Spanish. The culture overlaps a lot too, okay? Basically, and part of that is because of history. At one point in time, Portugal and Galicia were one, kind of in that same vein. At least the northern part of Portugal and Galicia were one. But then they got split up, and it's all this stuff. I'm not going to get fully into that today. But anyways, these are the backs. This deck is longer and fatter than standard tarot, so this is a little hard to hold. But I love this deck because it shows Galician myths. But, as I said, it also very much overlaps with Portuguese myths. So there's a lot of things in here I kind of recognize, and then there's a lot of things in here I don't. I am waiting very, very patiently for Jonasa to release a guidebook talking more about the stories in this one. Because again, there's some things I recognize being Portuguese, but then there's a lot of stories I don't know because they're probably definitely more on the Galicia side of things than a fusion of both. But it is such a cool deck. It is very what's the word? I guess you could say esoteric in that way. It's very, very deeply ingrained in, the region, okay? And so for that reason, it's very beautiful, but I have not used this really for any readings yet because I want to be able to deep dive into this. I literally am waiting for that guidebook. Cardstock is nice though, and it bends nicely. Oh, excuse me. My goodness. Don't know what's happening to me. Anyways, I do find this deck beautiful. I love the color scheme. It reminds me so much of when I was in Portugal. I really am interested in going to Galicia, though, to just see how similar it is, to hear the Galician language more clearly, because even the way it's written is very much like Portuguese, so it's just very fascinating to me, being that like weird middle ground between Portugal and Spain. It's just so cool, and I just like being able to, I like the idea of being able to dive deeper into this. But yes, the creator is trying to make a guidebook for this. I hope she does release it. I would wait, and I'm eager to buy it. Because I'm just really curious to see more about these stories, because I do not. That's the other thing. Even though I am of Portuguese descent, I don't often get access to the stories because I don't live in Portugal. And it's very hard to get that printed and sent over here in America, just the way it is, you know. So I haven't always had access to the myths and the legends. Part of that too, because a lot of Portuguese and even Spanish tradition is very much entrenched in the Catholic Church. And so it's very hard. It was very hard, especially like Spanish Inquisition and all the other stuff, and Portuguese Inquisition, to really get back to the pagan side of things. So there's that too. That's the whole aspect. But yeah, I do still find this deck very stunning, and I just want to be able to dive deeper into it one day. So this is the Nemith Tarot. This is the last deck for this video. If you've watched this long, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time. Bye!